The 20th century is full of photographers whose bold works explored the taboo topics of sexuality and identity. Robert Mapplethorpe, whose depictions of homoeroticism and BDSM themes sparked nationwide debates on the limits of art during his infamous obscenity trial. Cindy Sherman, whose provocative photographs of medical mannequins revealed the uncanny strangeness of bodies and desire. Jürgen Klauke, Luciano Castelli, Jan Saudek. These legendary artists are remembered as pioneers of the sexual revolution, who used erotic imagery to celebrate the human body and the identities it represents. But long before them, there was one artist whose unapologetically erotic works pushed the boundaries even further, an artist whose life was as provocative as his creations, an extraordinary journey filled with fabricated stories, death, not one but two, and explorations of taboo. Pierre Molyneux was born in 1900 in Agen, a small commune in southwestern France. When Molyneux turned 18, he moved to Bordeaux, where he started working towards establishing his artistic career. Molyneux's journey in the art world began with simple, inoffensive landscape paintings done in a soft impressionist style. These works were pleasant to the eye and quickly gained popularity among the bourgeoisie, and in 1927 he finally held his first exhibition. From that point on, his paintings became a regular feature in local salons. Soon after, Molyneux married and had two children, a boy and a girl, and his life seemed to be following a predictable conventional path until May 10th, 1940. World War II struck France. Like many other men, Molyneux was immediately mobilized. However, with the German forces advancing rapidly through the country, much of France was occupied within months, and Molyneux was taken prisoner. France was gripped by the harsh realities of war, restrictions, the collapse of the artistic community, and the pressures of living under Nazi rule. 4 years into the occupation, Molyneux's father took his own life. Sadly, just months before the war ended. After the war, Molyneux abandoned figurative painting and created his first abstract piece, White Satin, The Eye of God. Influenced by esotericism, fetishism, and a growing obsession with death, his artistic direction gradually shifted towards surrealism. This transformation, coupled with constant domestic conflicts, unsettled his wife, leading to their eventual separation. In 1950, to symbolize his rebirth as both a man and an artist, Molyneux created a grave for himself, marked by a cross inscribed with the words, "Here lies Pierre Molyneux, born on 13 April 1900, died around 1950. He was a man without morals. He was proud of it and gloried in it. No need to pray for him." Soon after, Molyneux unveiled his first explicit artwork, The Great Battle. The painting depicted a surreal entanglement of bodies locked in a love joust caused a massive scandal among his bourgeois audience, who came to the salon expecting to see his usual landscapes. Shunned by his bourgeois audience, Molyneux decided to seek support from the one person who could understand his provocative vision, the leader of the French surrealists, André Breton. In 1952, Molyneux sent Breton a letter with photographs of his works and an explanation of his predicament. After several excruciating weeks, he finally received a response. "Be assured, dear Pierre Molyneux, that the surrealists are very much your friends." Recognizing Molyneux's imagery as fiercely anti-bourgeois, anti-religious, and a direct challenge to the decaying morals of the world, Breton welcomed him into the surrealist group, and by 1959, Molyneux was showcasing his works at international surrealist exhibitions alongside other celebrated provocateurs like Salvador Dali, Wilhelm Fredi, and René Magritte. Molyneux's dark, transgressive art featured merging bodies, intricate fishnet patterns, and shocking experimentation, including mixing paint with his own seed, something that earned him the title of a wizard of erotic art from Breton. But Breton's favor was fleeting, and Molyneux was excluded from his circle as quickly as he had been introduced there. After all, Breton's surrealist movement was as much about personal relationships and shifting allegiances as it was about art. Perhaps it was Breton's own unpredictable nature, or Perhaps it was Molinier's painting O Mary, Mother of God, in which he depicted a hermaphroditic Christ in an eroticized scene that crossed the line for Breton. Having proven too much for even the surrealists, Pierre Molinier was once again shunned. However, unlike his fellow artists, whose provocations were framed as art, Molinier lived out the transgressions and sexual obsessions that other surrealists could only dream about. Shifting his focus away from painting, Molinier turned to the monochrome fetishistic photographs, for which he is most famously remembered nowadays. Working with rudimentary equipment, a bellows camera, wooden frames, no enlarger, and his kitchen as a makeshift darkroom, he transformed his apartment into a studio where he crafted his own surreal fantasy world. The primitive tools he used gave his photos an antiquated quality, reminiscent of early 20th century boudoir photography, where the first erotic images were captured. Influenced by photographers like Hans Bellmer and Morton Bartlett, Molinier often incorporated dolls into his works, transforming them into lifeless objects of desire. His lust and fascination with female body were so overwhelming that he desired to be inside it in every sense, including dressing up as one. Molinier started to use himself as a model, dressing in stockings, self-made breastplates and corsets, often depicting himself in very bold acts, some of which I didn't even know were anatomically possible. His wish to embody the female form in such an intimate way aligns with the psychological explanation found in Freud's 3 essays on the theory of sexuality, where he introduced the idea of cross-dressing as a way to embody both desire and the object of desire. And indeed, Molinier was a self-proclaimed fetishist, uninterested in the body as a whole, but fixated on specific body parts. Legs, in particular, appear with relentless repetition in his work. Molinier claimed that legs of either gender interested him equally, as long as they were hairless and dressed in black stockings. And Molinier found the perfect medium to convey this obsession: photo montages. Actually, Pierre Molinier was among the first artists in the world to start experimenting with the technique of photo collages. I feel like this approach gave his works this feeling of visions being pulled directly from his subconsciousness. By cutting and reassembling body elements, he invented new fantastic creatures and gave them movement. These limbs often spiraled into mandalas, creating a hypnotic symmetry that blurred the line between fantasy and reality. And his life seemed to increasingly blur this line as well, as Molinier began spreading shocking stories about his past, ranging from tales of desecrating the body of his deceased sister to publicly introducing his model, who was also known as a notorious prostitute, as his daughter. On one hand, Molinier could be viewed as a mythomaniac seeking attention, but on the other hand, the behavior he exhibited in his photo works was undeniably real. This behavior, however, ultimately became the final breaking point that alienated him from his Romanian family, who could not reconcile with his unorthodox art and obscene claims. Shunned by society, the surrealists, and now his own family, Molinier withdrew from the world, becoming somewhat of a recluse. On March 3rd, 1976, Pierre Molinier experienced his second death, this time a physical one. There are numerous rumors about how and why Molinier chose to end his life, with some even suggesting he captured his final moments as an extension of his art, in keeping with the provocative nature of his work. And perhaps it was simply the increasing pain from his health issues, combined with emotional turmoil and isolation, that led him to take his own life. We may never know for certain how his life came to an end. However, one thing we do know is that Pierre Molinier was one of the first artists whose explicit, androgynous, gender-bending works pushed the boundaries of eroticism and left a lasting mark on the world of art. His radical vision continues to echo through the works of many artists today, challenging traditional notions of sexuality, identity, and the body. Even today, Pierre Molinier's art is still viewed as provocative, but imagine the shockwaves it sent through the cultural landscape of the 50s and 60s, in a time when the boundaries of public decency were so rigidly defined. Molinier's fusion of eroticism, surrealism, and fetishism was not just controversial, It was revolutionary. It's difficult to label his art as pornography, just as it's challenging to classify Mapplethorpe's works in those terms. And it's difficult to categorize Molyneux's work as self-portraiture in the same way we hesitate to call Cindy Sherman's work as such. His works weren't mere portraits. They were pieces that used his body to create an idea, a character, the ultimate erotic fantasy.